Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 25th and tonight's movie is Us. Real quick before we get started, I am so happy I caught this. This only occurred to me this morning. I did the math and this is the 100th episode of Horror Nights I've uploaded to this channel. 31 from 2017, 31 from 2018, 13 from 2019, and 25 more equals 100. I've done triple digits with this. And I like doing these, so I'm gonna keep doing Horror Nights for the foreseeable future. But anyway, back to Us, which is the movie that we're going to be talking about today. Us was directed by Jordan Peele, the same director of Get Out, one of the most impactful and talked about horror movies in the past few years. Get Out was such a phenomenon that it was kind of hard to follow it up, but apparently Us did fine, both critically and commercially. One thing that I noticed is that Get Out was fine, but it was a social commentary first, a horror movie second. Us seems more like a true blue horror movie. And it also stars Lupita Nyong'o, who is an amazing actress. Us is about a family that starts to get terrorized. I think the entire world gets terrorized by this, but we're mostly focusing on this one family. They're getting terrorized by doppelgangers. Creatures or humans or something that look exactly like them, but they're not them and they want to kill them. Here's the problem. I already know what the big twist at the end of this movie is. I have a very bad habit of reading Wikipedia plot summaries, and I know what the big twist is, and that's kind of bad because apparently that's a big part of what makes this movie so interesting, but I'm gonna try to ignore that and look at this with, fresh eyes. I'm gonna go check it out. Well, what a great movie for the 100th episode. Us was phenomenal. It's not perfect. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, but it is the best movie I've watched this month after searching. I didn't love Get Out, but Us is an amazing horror movie. As expected, Lupita Nyong'o knocks it out of the park and steals the show with her performance. Pretty much every actor in this movie is doing double duty. They play themselves and they play their doppelganger. In this movie, I think they're called the Tethered. So Nyong'o is playing the main character, Adelaide, as well as one of the main villains, her doppelganger, who's never really named in the movie, but in the credits they call her Red. She's very down-to-earth and likable as Adelaide, and she is very, unnerving and unsettling as Red. Red seems to be the only one of the Tethered that can, talk in normal sentences. The rest of them just, growl and grunt to make animal noises. But Red does talk. The only thing is that she talks in this really low voice. Already, it's impressive that Lupita Nyong'o can do that for so long without laughing. But she does such a great job playing both of these characters. Adelaide's character actually does have some experience with the Tethereds. When she was a kid, they never specify how old she was. I'm guessing she's 5, I don't know. She goes into this funhouse, House of Mirrors. For some reason, House of Mirrors are very popular in horror movies, and she sees her own doppelganger. And that event traumatized her. So obviously it hits very hard when she sees not only her own doppelganger, but the 4 doppelgangers of her family outside her house one night, wanting to come in and kill them. By the way, I loved the interactions of this family. It was funny, it was natural, and at times it was really touching. While we're on the subject of humor, they used humor very well in this movie. Compare this to It Chapter 2 that didn't really know when it should be serious and when it shouldn't be. With this one, there are funny moments in this movie. Some of them legitimately made me laugh. But when a scene is supposed to be scary, it's scary the whole time. When there are funny moments, they have their funny moments, and then they get back to the scary part. I feel like in this type of movie, those little moments of levity are supposed to put the audience at ease instead of just assaulting them with very disturbing scenes one after another. It enhances the experience instead of taking away from it. I also have to give major props to the scoring of this movie. Usually I don't notice a movie score unless it's bad, The Omen or The Killing of a Sacred Deer. But in this one, the scoring is used masterfully. I was told that this movie had a lot of jump scares in it, but it didn't really have any of them. Get Out had jump scares in it. This one seems more like creeping terror and sense of dread, which I appreciate a lot more. You'd think that this movie would get confusing at points, but no, it's actually very easy to spot one of the Tethered. Most of them can't talk besides groaning. Almost all of them are wearing red robes, and they're all carrying scissors, which are apparently the sharpest scissors in the world. I don't even think they cut things with those scissors, they just used it to stab. And I never really gave this any thought, but this movie sort of brings to light how horrifying it would be to see someone with your exact face and body coming at you with intent to kill. All the characters fight their doppelgangers at some point, and they all have to handle it differently in order to stay alive. But I think that the best part of the movie is the final battle between Red and Adelaide. I'm not going to give too much away, that'll be for the spoiler section, but it is directed, edited, put together wonderfully. It also used a tune that I've heard in meme videos, and I thought it was just like a standard thing, but no, apparently it was from this movie, and it is quite the theme. Considering what Get Out was like, I didn't really expect much from this movie. Get Out was good as a drama, but it wasn't good as a horror movie. This was amazing as a horror movie. Please watch it, I think it will be worth your time. And now I want to go into some spoilers. Let's start out by addressing the elephant in the room. As previously stated, I knew what the big twist in this movie was before going into it, but to this movie's credit, that didn't detract from the experience at all. If Goodnight Mommy is everything not to do with a twist, this is everything done right. It's kind of brilliant in the fact that the whole movie isn't built around the twist. It's not like if you take away the twist, the whole movie falls apart. In fact, they could have stopped without and not even used the twist at all, and the movie would have been just about as good. That twist is just something extra to add in to make the movie even more interesting. If I hadn't have known it, I think I probably would have been able to catch on somewhat, but the big twist in the movie is that with the scene back when Adelaide was a little girl in the funhouse, it ends before you see how it pans out, but it turns out the doppelganger switched places with her. She I think either knocked out or attacked Adelaide, dragged her down into the underground place where all the other tethered live, handcuffed her to a bed, and then went up to the surface to take her place. And what's brilliant about this twist is that it actually makes this movie make more sense. Because she was acting, even from the beginning, before things started happening, she was acting so traumatized and shaken by this incident, and I wasn't really sure why. I can't speak for anyone else except for me, but when I was a kid, if I saw a kid who looked exactly like me, I would be maybe weirded out or surprised, but it wouldn't be, mentally scarring. It wouldn't be enough to make me forget how to talk for an extended period of time. But the doppelganger, Red, used that recovery period as a way to learn how to blend in with the rest of the humans. It also explained how she seemed to know so much about who the tethered were and what they wanted. It also explained why Red seems so much more intelligent than the rest of the tethered. The way that the tethered work in this movie is that they show that they kind of they live underground and they don't just leave the underground for some reason, and they seem to try to be copying what their copies are doing up on the surface. There was a scene where they were walking around a carnival on a boardwalk, and the tethered were sort of walking around trying to mimic what the humans were doing. And the tethered in this movie, they don't seem to they seem conscious, but they don't seem to be that free thinking. But Red, or actually Adelaide, taught them to sort of be goal oriented and do things to better their situation. And that makes the dynamic between Adelaide and Red so much more interesting, because both of them have been on both sides of this. The one that's currently living as Adelaide has experienced what it was like to be one of the tethered, and she will do anything to avoid having to go back to that. But the one that's living as Red did have experience living as a human, and then was plunged into the hell of living as one of the tethered ones. So she doesn't just want her life back, she wants to send a message. As previously stated, the final fight between Red and Adelaide is spectacular in the way that it's done. They intersperse it with scenes of Adelaide when she was younger. This was after the experience in the funhouse, and she used to be a ballet dancer, and then it keeps interspersing cuts between them fighting and Adelaide dancing, and it's actually both of them were dancing. The tethered one was dancing down underground, and the human one was dancing up on the surface. And then it keeps cutting in, and the fight moves with the dance, and it moves with the music, and it's just A+, 2 thumbs up. The only real flaw in this movie that comes to mind is the fact that they don't really set up the backstory and background of the tethered too well. I think I would have preferred if they had left out as much as possible and didn't give you much detail as to who the tethered were and why they were living underground, but they give this thing as creating clones of humans, but they share a soul, so they're linked together, but then they were abandoned, so they live underground and are doing everything that humans are doing underground, and nobody has found them all this time. Like, I feel like they were aware of how far-fetched that part of the story was, because the first thing in this movie was saying that there are thousands of miles of empty tunnels underground in America. And I mean, sure, but there are also 300 million people in America. Also, it seems like the only food that the Tethered ever ate were rabbits, so that's a little weird. Like, can you live on rabbit alone? But whatever, that is small potatoes compared to how much this movie gets right. Huge props to Lupita Nyong'o for her performance. Huge props to Jordan Peele for his writing and directing. This was an excellent movie. A great movie for the 100th Horror Night. Alright, I'll see you guys tomorrow.